resume ATS. You know, you say I'm not supposed to be scared of it, but whatever. What else? Getting our resume propped and prepped for those to get past it or be able to support that, use that. And this week we are going to focus on everybody's favorite part. Interviews, interviews, interviews. And the crowd goes wild. Because it's probably your favorite part for real, Kelly. I feel like you're being facetious, but you like deep down, I love it. Um, so I wanted to incorporate to where we have the opportunity we have the tech. Now let's get an offer. And the way to get an offer is to navigate all those different nuances.
Right.
And interviews clearly are a huge thing. Starting out from that very, very beginning of screens.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It's a screen.
That's it. That's all it is.
So for those of you that are in the middle or we're learning the skills now, but for those of you that are looking to fully come into the space, have you all ever been in on a screen for a analytic role before? Okay. All right, I see y'all indeed down here. So the way that I gauge with the screens and the advice that I always give people with those screenings is they are essentially a screen.
Mm-hmm.
Super casual, not too casual, but more casual. Tell me what the salary is, give me a little bit more color regarding what the expectations are past that JD, that job description, because those are always like catch-alls. And to really kind of, I use them in the way that I tell them to, is to use it as an opportunity to try to get as much information as you can about that particular role so you can go into that interview knowing what you need to speak to when you're in there.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, is there anything that you would add to that conversation regarding those screenings and in your experience? What are some ways that you, from a tech recruiter's perspective, you get someone and you facilitate your screening? What are some things that the recruiter looks for? And what are some ways that they can gauge if this person is a strong fit? Of course, based on the skills and everything, but what are some like behavioral things that a recruiter might just go in with a different viewpoint to look for someone?
Mm-hmm. So do you want to think about the recruiter as the gatekeeper? You want to get past the gate. And if they're the gatekeeper, they're keeping the gate closed for a reason until you're able to pass the screener and get in front of the hiring manager. They want to know that you're a right fit. One, because our name is on the line, right? We want to make sure that we're putting in front of decision makers, hiring managers, stakeholders. We want to make sure that we're putting people in front of them that is in alignment to our previous conversation on the job description, on what they're looking for, on the team dynamic, on the deliverables, all the things that they're looking for. So that pre-screen is a two-way street. It's an opportunity for you to learn about the team, the structure, the reporting structure, the company, the culture. It's not just about them questioning you. You should also be questioning them as well. So think of the recruiting pre-screen, the first interview, as just an informational session, right? So that you can get past that person and then where you really want to go. So we tend to assess for fit in terms of, again, the team dynamic. Let's say I used to hire for testers early in my tech career. So I would look for, if the team already had 3 senior people and maybe 2 junior people, I'm looking for the middle person now.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them, what's motivating you to look right now? And then what did you do on your current job? One, I want to know why you're in the market. Is it money? Is it a new opportunity? Are you trying to get exposed to something different to see if it's going to be a quote unquote fit? And so that is the time, that pre-screen, that first interview, where you're being assessed just to see if it makes sense for me to next step. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to get too in depth. Sometimes they'll tell you though, because for you all, there may be an exercise in play. There may be a
Yeah.
coding exercise. Now, typically, it doesn't happen during the very first pre-screen. They do let you know, but this is your opportunity. You don't have to get too down in the weeds in terms from a technical perspective, but just to ensure that, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. I know the language. I know the jargon. And this is the reason why I'm leaving. This is what I've done in the past. This is what I'm looking for. That's the pre-screen. That's the pre-screen.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up another part that I forgot. Well, actually, you brought up two parts. The first part you brought up that I forgot to failed to mention was the fact that the way that I go into interviews is like I'm interviewing y'all too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like this has to be mutually beneficial for both of us. So I go into it with the mindset as well of, do I want to come here? Is this something that interests me as well? Is this a good fit for me too? So I forgot to mention that that's a good part. And the second part that you brought up that I failed to mention is the expectation of like the interview process. Because I know a lot of times, like I tell them within this role, within these type of roles, that it's not uncommon that one of your interviews is like a tech round and it's made up of a technical assessment, and they get their screening does give you the opportunity to gauge like, okay, how many rounds is this interview process and what can I expect um, with that process. Another thing that I ask too is like, and tell me, Kelly, if this is like okay, but I'm like, where are you all with the hiring process? Because to me, that always helps me gauge like, are you all just like passively looking? Are you all aggressively trying to fill this role? So I can know how to like start at least abstractly considering if I were to get an offer between now and next week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's a good question. And we always want the candidate to feel like they are highly sought after. So of course we're going to give you what you want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to be very strategic in the questions that you ask, because it could be that role they just fired somebody,
Oh
or they
yeah,
just
that's
let
true.
somebody go. So if they know that you know what you're talking about, so if you use the jargon, is this a open head count or is this a backfill?
Mm.
Right, and they're like, okay, this person might know a little bit what they're talking about, so let me just be straight up with them and say this is a backfill, right? And so, what does success look like in this role to make sure it's in alignment with my values, my core values, you know, my next opportunity, right? So these are just getting straight in, so you're not wasting time. You don't want to get in and then find out that there's no growth potential. They just let somebody go. This is the third person in this role because of a bad manager. You can
Yeah.
ask. It's fair game.
Yeah.
They're assessing you. You assess them. Why is this role open?
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see that because I think I think it matters too. Why is this role open?
It does. Yeah, it absolutely does.
Do they have to tell the truth though? I mean,
They don't have to tell the truth right away, no, but that's why I said you use certain words.
yeah.
They might think you know something.
Oh, okay.
Little sauce. Is this an
Yeah.
open head count? Is this a new head count or is this a backfield? You really want to know if it's a backfield. And then if they say backfield, you want to know why.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be great if they said, well, the person that was in this role recently got a promotion.
Yeah.
So, there is internal growth.
Growth. Yeah.
But if they kind of fluff around, something happened.
Mm-hmm. Something right. The math not mathing.
Right, right. And then you can do some digging on LinkedIn and you can figure out, because the person still got it on their LinkedIn as a current or former position. So you're trying to get some insight, because a lot of times you can't gauge culture, but you can ask questions
That's
that will
true.
give you enough for you to do your own deep dive, Glassdoor, and all the things. You can go to all of those things to see what does the interview process look like, because
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna feed you. I did it as a recruiter. I'm gonna tell you what you want to hear. Oh, it's a fantastic company, and we do this, and then you get in the door and like, yeah, I love you.
Yeah. Shake it on the inside.
Right. But I put the onus back on the candidate, because it's a sale to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm selling you the position. I'm selling you the opportunity. Not all of it is bad,
Right.
but my job is on the line. I'm trying to get you in. So I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. Your job is to assess if I'm telling you the truth. And if you see on Glassdoor, I remember I did this for an interview. It was all bad.
Mm.
And I remember they called me, and I'm like, why would I come? I said that. Why would
Mm.
I come there based off of the comments that I saw on Glassdoor? Well, we can't make everyone. And their response, I didn't want to go further in the interview. I'm sure I dodged the bullet.
Heck yeah. Everybody ain't lying.
Right, that's right. Everybody is not. So you have to look at it as a two-way street. You don't want to wait. You don't want to get in the job and then you're looking for another job 60 days later because they weren't truthful.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a job description and it has nothing to do with what you're doing, or you didn't took on 2 or 3 additional roles and you're not even being paid for that or compensated for that.
Right.
So it is to do your best, in your best interest, to ask these questions before you get in the door.
Right. Yeah, and I guess it's whenever you're making like that move, those are things I mean, when you think about it, that's something you should probably consider to apply to every aspect of your life anyway. Like, just let me be mindful of, what this looks like for me and how it impacts. Because, yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
You thinking about something?
Cause I know, what I'm thinking about, because I recall, I think I mentioned this on I recall probably about 3 years ago, I was in an interview and I got a red flag from the hiring manager during the interview. And I withdrew myself from the interview process. She made a comment regarding the person that had the role while the role was open. But she made the comment that he would get up and go for walks and stuff a lot. And I'm like, what is it? Is he doing his work? Like, to me, that was a red flag. Because, like, you going to be tracking my steps? Like, I be walking too.
Right. No, that's great. That's great because you want to do that before you get in. I know, unfortunately, a lot of professionals will wait till they get in desperation mode.
Yeah.
And just take the job, but it ends up being it's not fulfilling. It's not satisfying. You're just taking another headache. It's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not worth it. You're wasting your time. It's just not worth it. Get what you deserve and ask the questions up front. And most importantly, don't wait till you're in desperation mode. And don't wait till you need to make a move or do like I did. And I waited till I started having health challenges before I decided to make a transition, which was not smart. And that's why I tell everybody now, be proactive instead of reactive. As humans, we always wait and react to stuff instead of, having a plan up front. And then you don't feel so disheveled. You don't feel like this is something I gotta get right now.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Does anybody else have any questions? Because I'm full of them. So what about, I know within tech roles, I know there's always all this emphasis on tech skills, tech skills, tech skills. And the way that I teach and the way that I coach is that you got to know your tech skills. I mean, given it, we know that we have to know our skills, but not only do we have to know those skills, we have to know how to adequately apply them. Like, there's other things that you have to know in addition to those hard tech skills. That leads me in a question regarding those soft skills. As a tech recruiter, how much weight do you see put on your a tech professional's soft skills?
A lot of weight. I'm working on a YouTube video right now about the language because it's not so much that what you say, but how you say it. So you can get in front of a decision maker or stakeholder. You can say all day that I know data analytics and I just finished this course and I did this over here for this company and I worked on this project. But they're listening for you to say, like when I hear Lorita online and she says, I always talk about this, but the joins, they're listening because your language, that'll tell them. You can sit in there all day and say, I can do it, and I just finished this course on it. But you tell me how you do it.
Right.
How do you do it?
Right.
Right. And I've sat across from candidates that'll come in and because we go in with the thought in our mind, like, I know I can do it.
Right.
I know I can do it. But you're going to have to convince me that you can do it. And the only way you can convince me is to go deep and not surface level.
Right.
Talk about how you put them together. You did the pivot table. What was the result after the data got together? And then the SQL and the tablet. Like, what did you do? Because that's what I'm listening for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sitting there because you said you did it. That's
Yep.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. But I need to know how you did it. So the hard skills come in because you do have the technical skills. That's why I called you, because it's on your resume. Now I need to know if you can put all that together and share with me a narrative of how you, as a data analytics specialist, how you work that thing. There's 1,000 or 1,000,000 people with data analytics skills. How do you do
Mm-hmm.
that? So you're using a combination of your tech skills, and now you're communicating using your soft skills. Are you communicating effectively? That's a soft skill.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to critically think about your response?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you trying to give me an answer
Mm-hmm.
or a list so that you sound transactional and tactical? But there's no depth to what you're saying, because the next candidate that comes in, they're going to sit there and they're going to tell me how they worked on this project and they use X, Y, and Z. They're going to tell me the outcome. They're going to tell me about the collaboration and the partnership. They're going to tell me about the team members and all of that. And that's more believable.
Mm-hmm.
Depth to that. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to make sure, in terms of your soft skills, you're able to frame your skills and everything that you've acquired through the years that relate to this position in a way that is believable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where a gap is sometimes, because anybody can put that on their resume. I say that all the time. It take like I can put SQL on my resume easily, and then when you get in an interview, you're not able to explain any concepts you've used or how you've used it or any analysis you've done or any work that you've done. And it's like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you sit on the other side from the hiring seat, we can tell. Like we can always tell if somebody like doesn't have, at least not, you know, if it's not a senior level, the expectation is not for your technical skills to be extremely deep, but at least past those surface levels.
For sure.
You know, and I think I'm sorry, Kelly. I saw your brain spinning, but I think that's where that gap comes in with, from I learned the skill to I have done this. I have created this project. I have analyzed this data. I have built this dashboard. I have done, you know, the work, and it changes their language to convey that and support that.
Absolutely, and you can tell,
Mm-hmm.
just like you just ran it down. Nobody that just put it on their resume could have done that. Same as recruiters. I had somebody tell me the other day, I was talking to, and it's like, the other recruiters, she didn't tell me that. And I said, it could be she hasn't been on earth that long because she's 30-something years old. And it could be she just don't have that much experience in the space. You can tell
Mm-hmm.
based on conversation. Sometimes you're wondering, how did this person get with this person?
Mm-hmm.
He 80 and she 20. What they gonna talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Or she 80 and he 20. What they gonna talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they only know so much.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, you can go to ChatGPT and you can put all the things on your resume, but you
Mm-hmm.
got to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to know.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to know.
Mm-hmm. You can always tell. What about so I know one big thing is, in addition to those soft skills, we like to focus on certain frameworks. I struggle with that personally. I know I do. What exactly is the STAR framework method, and how should it be applied in an interview, like in a live interview, or how, in a way that shows impact to, this is what I've done and this is how I navigated that space?
Mm-hmm. So, for those that don't know, the STAR framework is situation, task, action, result. And when you're in an interview, prior to going, the way that I prep my clients is I ask them to have 3 different scenarios kind of in their pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not sitting there looking up and trying to think of something. They just have 3 different scenarios that they can turn any way, right? And they can use in an interview. So the situation, task, action, result. What was the situation? So if they say, tell me about a time, and you can typically tell if it's a behavioral based question, they'll use the word when. Tell me about a time when.
Okay.
If it's an event based question, they won't use the word when. It'll just be straightforward. Like, are you familiar with Tableau? You have to answer that and say, yes, I am. Two things come to mind when I think of that. That's a framework that I use. But going back to the STAR method, if you say, tell me about a time when you collaborated with a team member and they weren't pulling their weight, the situation. We were working on the United Way fundraiser for the Human Resources Department, and so we had to come up with ideas for da-da-da-da. And there was one team member who wouldn't show up to the meetings. They weren't contributing and they weren't engaged when we would talk about it. They weren't on the email list and da-da-da-da. So that was a situation. And I told them what happened. The task, that's talking about you. So it's not a we, it's an I. So the task is, I was responsible for the number, the fundraising number that we had to meet, which was $100,000. What I did was I collaborated with legal and tech and finance and put on a fashion show to collect the funds. So that was my piece.
Task.
I did the situation. That was my task.
Okay.
The action. As a result, we were able to raise $80,000. We didn't meet our goal, but we were able to meet, 80% of it. And the result, we made up the difference by writing the check, and United Way was happy. So situate, task, action, result.
I know it keeps you organized too, especially for the fellow ADHDers out here. Like, because I'm like, why am I talking about cinnamon rolls? And we was just like in this, like, I'm supposed to be talking about this. But yeah, I think that's the part of me personally, just being vulnerable, that I personally struggle with, like keeping the thoughts organized to be able to adequately convey. This is what it is. I can do it, but I have to constantly in my brain talk about this. Yep. Yeah. Like it's like that all the time. But yeah, I like that. How do you think, or what advice do you have for the best way for someone to answer? Like, I know a lot of times they always ask, so what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What is some of the best advice or the best way as a candidate that we can convey what some of our challenges are or some of our weaknesses are without looking weak? Because we ain't weak, but we want to, be vulnerable, but also show that even in a vulnerability, we are still the best fit possibly for this role if they're the best fit for us.
You can actually use the same framework. You can talk about a time. You can say, you know what, I appreciate that question. Two things come to mind. That's a framework.
Okay.
I appreciate the question. Two things come to mind. That way you know you only got two things that you have to say.
Yeah.
Right? And you talk about, and you don't necessarily call them weaknesses.
Okay.
One of my areas of opportunity is when I first started in recruiting, I didn't really build the rapport with the stakeholders. I was very tactical in my approach to hiring candidates, right? So I'm talking about the position, I'm talking about something that I do on a day-to-day basis. So that was an area of opportunity for me. The way that I so the situation, the way that I combat that, I would attend the staff meetings. I would sit in the back, just not interrupt, but that way I start building a relationship with the team members and the stakeholder. I would take notes so I can get more familiar with what they do and the deliverables that they have. And as a result, over time, I got better, right? And I believe that, I believe in repetition. I'm not looking for perfection.
Right.
Right. So you're sharing with them that you're not trying to be perfect. You do have areas of opportunity. So you go through the same scenario, right? STAR. And as a result, now it's common practice for me to meet with stakeholders and decision makers and go to their staff meetings, not all the time, but maybe once a quarter to get familiar with what they do and then build that on that relationship.
That makes sense. I also like I like that question. Two things come to mind. I like that because even if it's a subtle, Courtney be laughing, even if it's a subtle thing, like it still structures it in your brain to be able to compartmentalize it. Yeah.
You be thinking, y'all laughing because Lorita be thinking, she be
I mean, because you know what's so, I know we talked about that likability factor and stuff in previous sessions. And to me, what always stands out to me about interviews is the fact that some things are like subtle that you can do that, you know, show like when you think of interviews, a lot of, especially within tech, a lot of the weight is focused on the skills, and those are very important. However, it almost overshadows the importance of being able to communicate and have a conversation. And, you know, like those things are equally, but not only communicate and have a conversation, but do it in a way that is structured, you know, to convey, yes, I know analytics, but I also know how to communicate and problem solve and you know, collaborate, be collaborative, and etc. So I think that that's what always stands out to me behind it, like the psychology behind it.
no, that's good. That's an excellent point because back when I, excuse me, started in tech recruiting, it was kind of a, it was a thing for tech and technical people and engineers. We had to adapt to them because
Yeah.
we were taught that, you know, they're heads down, they're introverts.
Yeah.
It was just a stereotype, really, of a tech person. And so the book bags and the jeans,
Yeah.
so if they don't come into the interview and they don't talk much, just remember they're tech people. But now it's the opposite of that. You have to be able to communicate. I remember going to LinkedIn Connect, I think it was 2018, and the number one soft skill that they were saying back then is communication. So you have to complement your skills with the ability to communicate what it is, and not just in interviews, but you have to do that on your
At work.
at work, yeah, you know, during your meetings and all the things. Like it is the number one. So that's something you can practice. Practice makes permanent. You can just talk to, you guys are in here, so I would talk to each other and to make sure you're communicating with impact. Like this is what I worked on. Here's what happened. Not just surface level. Tell a story to get people to get their attention, right? And so, and you work on that. It comes, you know, with practice.
Yeah, practice.
But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. You have to be able to communicate regardless of what your title is or what level you're on. You have to be able to do that.
And it's crazy that you mentioned it about the stereotype, because that is a stereotype of people that are in tech. Like, and when you do have, I tell my students, like when you do have just a little razzle dazzle or just a little personality, it will take you a long way, because even the communication is very high and the social is very necessary. But even now, that is an uphill battle for within this industry, just due to the line of work. It is a lot of head down work. Like I'll go, first of all, it's mostly cameras off. Like I'll go days without communicating with like people, and it's like, I'm cool with that, but like, you know, like it's definitely very much so. And it's a when people think of like tech, they think of like, oh, the backpacks, the tech bros, the this, the that. And it's like, nah, we over here, like some of us, you know, so it is definitely, I can see that how they contributes to like navigating their space.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to transition into tech recruiting. I didn't know it. I didn't know it back then, but once I got into tech recruiting, I'm like, oh, it's cool over here. Like the interviews and the dialogue was more conversational.
Yeah.
When I interviewed at Microsoft, he was sitting at a Starbucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he, just the way that it felt different. The energy was different. I felt more relaxed going through the
Yeah.
because he was so relaxed.
Yeah.
You know, he told me, and I asked him one of my, you know, you ask questions at the end. I said, what keeps you at Microsoft? And he said, I can be myself.
Yeah.
He said, I'm sitting here at Starbucks and, you know, the building is right down the street, but I just didn't want to be with the noise. He said, I'm an introvert, but I'm the VP over whatever it was, engineering ops that I was working on. And he said, they know that about me. And if my team needs me, they'll just come to my office and get me. He said, but I don't do meetings and things like that. They got my phone number. But it was just, and that's also the culture of Microsoft. I'm sure all companies aren't like that, but that sold me.
Yeah.
Because I don't, I mean, I know it sounds weird, but I don't really like talking to people if I don't have to.
Nobody believes you. We don't believe you. You need more people.
But when you've done it forever,
Yeah.
like, you know, but yeah, that's so me. So I
Yeah.
like the space. I like the industry. You guys are in a very high demand. I just talked to somebody. They got like 40 data engineering roles open. It's insane.
Oh my God.
I thought about you immediately.
Yes, I would love to talk to you about that.
It's insane what's happening.
Oh my God. That actually leads me to my next question. So, in my experience within industry to industry, within even team to team, SQL is SQL. You have multiple dialects. We talk about that in our tech sessions. We talk about the multiple dialects, the different type of databases, etc., etc. However, there are certain things that a team might reference, and they might call it something totally different than what I know it to be. And the way that the way that I navigate this, I'm like, well, what exactly does that mean? Because if you ask me about a specific task that might be done, and you all might refer to it as something totally different than what I know it to be, that's not uncommon as well. Like we're referring to the same thing, but under two different names or two different guys. It's like, even I know within Microsoft, one thing that stood out to me is one time I was on an interview at Microsoft. I think the role was, it was an analytic position, but I forget the exact title. But Microsoft refers to their KPIs as OKRs. And that stood out to me I remember like tucking that in my stowaway, because I'm like, oh, okay. And I've experienced multiple things throughout my career where it's like, we're talking about the same or very similar things, but you're calling it A and I'm calling it B. And sometimes if you don't dig deeper into that from someone doing an interview, you might miss the opportunity to convey that I do actually have this skill, but I call it this.
Absolutely. It's just like when you visit different countries. If you go to Spain, they're going to speak Spanish. If you go to Italy, they're going to speak Italian. If you go to Greece, they're going to speak Greek. So everywhere you go, every company, every organization, they have their own language. The onus is on you to engulf yourself into the culture, into the jargon, into the language. Have you ever been to a new company and during the town hall, they use a lot of acronyms. They are acronym heavy. The STL and the ATL and everything. You don't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. But the onus is on you to go through the handbook or the SharePoint site or whatever it is to learn the terminology, to get familiar with that. If you want to get around Italy, you're going to have to pull up Google Translate and you're going to say, what did they say? So you want to engulf yourself into that community, into that culture, and start figuring out who are the KPI, who are the key, people of influence there, who are the opinion leaders, and sit around there, get exposed to people that know the culture, and anything as simple as, or something as simple as a job title can be different. A customer service agent at Verizon can be a client agent specialist at T-Mobile. Right? And you're wondering, well, did they do the same? It looked like the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's on you to look at the job description, to ask those questions during the pre-screen. It could be, to your point, like you said, it's called something else, but you want to make sure that it's in alignment with what you know, or is it something that you have to learn? Just like Amazon has the 13 leadership principles. Mm-hmm. They stand by, right? You may go to Netflix and they have, I know they got a whole crazy little onboarding thing that this lady named Patty created. They have stood on that for decades, and it will not change. Mm-hmm. You have to, adopt and embrace their culture. Mm-hmm. What they do.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Your wheels can turn.
They do, because I'm flicking my ring now because I'm thinking, what about if someone they have the opportunity to explain that, but let's say you have someone, and especially someone that is, they've been within their careers and they're going somewhere else. But what are some ways that they can or what's the one most valuable piece of advice, just a piece of advice or guidance that you would give someone before they interview? Besides the research, we know you got to research the company. We know you need to have some sort of baseline understanding of what that company culture is and if it fits for you. But what are some ways that people can do? What are some things that people can do to prepare outside of that, I guess, to just make sure that you're streamlined and in a way to go in effectively and not sell yourself, because they got to sell themselves too, but convey that I'm a strong candidate for this role.
Mm-hmm. I think you hit it on the head with research. One of the things that we do, you know, that I share with people is you can Google, you can put the company's name. So if it's Coca-Cola, Google Netflix on Google. And then after that, put events and presentations. So Google events and presentations, Coca-Cola events and presentations. What's going to come up is a link that says investor relations. All of the presentations they've ever done in terms of their earnings, projections, anything that they're doing, all of that is right there. What you get from that is their language, their jargon. You get all of that inside of those because they're public companies, so they have to share that. Even if you look at the website, they have a language, they have a way that they speak. When you're interviewing, if they say, let's say they use the word, I don't know, it was this one CEO I met with. He used to say, he signed his emails energetically yours.
Mm.
I noticed that. So when I talked to him, this is in a staffing company, I was trying to get the contract and I got it. So I signed up and he looked back and he smiled at me. I think that's why I got the contract though. Mm-hmm. After all that conversation, I said to him, I said, thanks for being with me. I appreciate that. Energetically yours forever. And he just
not forever.
I said, but you can see it on the website. They're going to use those phrases and words that they use as a company and as a culture. But look at events and presentations and just go through some of those presentations, and they're on there. Mm-hmm. It's public.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you think that if there are, let's say you have a screening for a role that you appear to be a strong fit for, however, there might be some gaps that exist. Not only, maybe just a couple of gaps that might exist, or you don't fit every last one of the boxes, check every last one of the boxes. What are some ways that a candidate should navigate their space? I have most of this and I have experience in this. However, there's a little gap. I say little, but there's a gap in this skill. What should be the best way that a candidate can navigate their space while still showing the value, but also acknowledging, because you don't want to oversell or lie, also acknowledging that, like, while I don't have experience doing this, I've done this. What are some ways that a candidate can identify those skill gaps, but also show that they still are the best fit regardless of?
You always want to speak on what you do have. So okay. As much as possible, you don't want to say, I don't have.
Okay.
You can say, I'm familiar with, especially if you've heard the term. And most of the time, if you're in an interview, you may be familiar with greenhouse, but you've never used it. Mm-hmm. So I can say, indirectly, I'm familiar with greenhouse. I've used a lot of applicant tracking systems throughout my career, such as so-and-so. So I'm not saying I don't know how, because I know I can learn anything, just like you all know, right? So if you do have an area where there's skill gaps in, you can say, one, if you truly have been exposed to it, say I've been exposed to it. You're not saying that you used it, but
yeah,
you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Number two, you can say that indirectly, when I collaborated with finance, we used as a team, But if it's something you just do not know, I would talk to something that's adjacent to that. So if you have never used, what's something y'all use?
That's what I was about to say. typically, like, one of the benefits of being in this space is like, okay, it's the sequel. Sequel is sequel. It's in multiple dialects. And that's beneficial because a lot of times they might use a different dialect of SQL, but you know one dialect and it's equally as well. I've used T SQL before. That's one thing, but you hit the nail on the head with the Tableau. A lot of times, if in my experience, if they require dashboards or reporting, and they do currently use Tableau and you've used Power BI, or they use Power BI and you use Tableau, that's still weight to say, well, I might not have experience. I've been exposed to Tableau, but I've used Power BI extensively because in my experience, they
there you go. Talk about it. There you go. That's it.
yeah, because in my experience, like Tableau is harder to learn to me than Power BI anyway. So it's like if you know one, they're all pretty much
Right.
I like that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you want to do. That interview is to convince them. Right?
Yeah.
You have to be believable. That's the only thing you have to do in the interview is be believable. And the next person is either going to be more believable than you. If you've gone through 4 and 5 interviews and you want, like, I got to the 5th round, got to the 4th, it's just because the other person was more believable. Mm-hmm. And the only way that they are is through this.
Yeah.
That's how they communicate. They're not showing anything, they're just talking. So what about their conversation and their communication made them more believable? That's why communication is the #1 soft skill. You have to practice that. You have to make sure that you are peppering throughout your conversation the words they want to hear as it relates to data analytics. What are some of those words? What is the jargon?
I like
That's
that.
it. That's it. That's it.
I like that.
Because you could say, if it was a project manager, you could say, anybody can go in and say, um, I led teams or whatever. But the next person coming in may say, I collaborated with stakeholders on assessing all of our deliverables so that we will meet the timeline. Same thing. I'm using the jargon in there. We got the same thing. But who's more convincing?
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but it is.
That's what it is.
It's unfortunate because some people are like super confident and wrong. It's definitely unfortunate, but it definitely is the science. That's the sauce.
That's the sauce. It's not rocket science. It's just studying the words. You know the words, but you're not using them. And a lot of us have surface level language. And there's a study that's done that humans have about 250 words that in their bank. 80 years old. You know what I mean? They only use 250 words. They use the same words over and 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 over. How you doing? I'm good.
Yeah.
Next person. How you doing? I'm good. You gotta expand your, if you want to. You don't have to.
Right. And look at me saying, yeah, right. That's 2 of my 250 words.
Look at me. Right.
I mean, it makes sense though. It makes a lot of sense.
That's it. That's exactly. It's called a lexicon. I teach my clients, so you should have a deep lexicon. Think of an iceberg and you just see the tip, and below it's a whole big old thing. Your lexicon should be underneath that water. So you should have a word bank that you can pull those words. Doesn't have to be fancy words or long words. Just have more than 250 that you can pull from because you're being assessed on how you communicate. If I got on here and I couldn't talk, all I can say was, yeah, just get your resume updated. Lorita be like, girl,
yeah,
give us more.
Get her out of here.
Break that thing down.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to do that. And that way you are likable, you're believable, and you come across more confident as well. If you're able to explain, you see how I'm using my hands when I'm talking? We should get into that one day. But this is also engaging the person that is on the other side. Right? You have to be as animated as me. But if your hands are down here, I look real neat, real mild. But if I'm up here and I'm talking about, day to day, one of the things that I do is this is a more confident presence than this. guys can do that in team meetings. Even if you're on video, let them see your hands. Even if it's just, you know what, I was thinking about that. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're here,
Mm-hmm.
you're exuding that person that is either not engaged or you're being assessed. And
Mm-hmm.
remember, perception is reality.
Hmm.
You may be further from the truth. You could be a very outgoing person, but their perception is their reality of
That makes sense.
you.
What are some things that like a candidate does where to signal, even if it is that they are a strong fit for the role?
I think one of the things is what I just said, just the confidence, exuding confidence, and that's just again not being
Okay.
clever, just
Yeah.
super clear and concise and able to communicate their value. They know it. They're likable. Um, it's really basic stuff. I think sometimes we get too deep and we
Overthink
get
it.
analysis. Yeah, we overthink and we get analysis paralysis, thinking we have to be all. You should be polished, but you don't want to come across as phony or fake and not real. Because at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, we're working with you every day. We're with you more than we were with our loved ones. And so now we've gotten to that point. I've seen that come in the past, 10 years or so, that people really want to work with someone that has personality.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, well, when I
Mm-hmm.
was on that stage a couple of weeks ago, like I had the demo, I could be silly, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as a result, I've been asked to do other things. So you
Mm-hmm.
want to come across as likable, just
Mm-hmm.
being yourself without, of course, you don't want to get too comfortable.
Right.
You don't want to get too comfortable in an interview, but you do want to showcase some personality. So I would say, you know, share some personality. Be yourself and not too stoic and stiff, but be yourself. At the end of the day, that's all you can be. And that's how you stand out and
Mm-hmm.
you outshine other candidates. You don't want to be a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I struggle with that as well, just the right amount of silliness.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta watch that
Cause
too.
I don't stop. So yeah.
But
Yeah.
I can't have fun. I don't want it. Like I don't want to be. I probably because it's been forever being putting the mask on, having
Mm-hmm.
to pretend and having to be this person that no,
Yeah.
no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Throughout all of your years, Kelly, of tech recruiting and work that you've done, what is like one particular candidate that you can think of that stands out to you like for the best reason? Like is this somebody when you think of your experience, you're like, oh, I remember this person because of X, Y, and Z. And was it beneficial for them?
Yeah, there's two, and yeah, two. So the first guy, and I don't know if this holds any credence, but just to describe, he was an Asian guy, and I'll tell you why I said that. And this was at Microsoft, and they wanted the guy, so I had to, negotiate the offer with him. And I remember when I presented the offer, the compensation and everything, he wrote back in an email.
Mm-hmm.
So I typically give candidates 48 hours, right, so they can respond back. And so it was the second day, and he wrote back in the email. He spelled out everything that he had. He had 2 MBAs. He had worked on several projects. He had a GitHub. He had all these things. I had never seen someone say, and spell it out in a way that I really want this opportunity. Here's what I need in order to be made whole. Here's the value that I
Bring to the table.
bring to the table. When I sent the email to the hiring manager, I just sent it over. Here's the response from, I'm just gonna make up his name, Michael. The hiring manager, this is what makes me remember the candidate. The hiring manager said, give it to me. I know this guy. He's one of the top players in Singapore. Like he knew the guy from his work, from his LinkedIn, from his GitHub, from his projects. I never forgot that guy because as a recruiter, we're going to, I shouldn't say this, but we go low and you got to work your way up. It's there for us to give it to you, but we look better when we're able to save the department money, right? And so he knew his value. He knew his value, and I was just impressed by the structure of his email, the tone of his email, and the fact that the hiring manager said, "Oh, I know him. Give him whatever he wants." No, I have never, and I've been doing this a long time. You know that. I've never had a hiring manager say, "Give him what he wants." So I was able to go and get him stock and equity, all the things, and put a package together for him. This other guy, I think I was at Macy's at this time, and this is when we were. This is when machine learning first came out. Very first time it came out. He was an older guy, and we were wrapping up the negotiation, and he asked me. He said, "What type of stipend do I get?" I didn't know for a stipend. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, "What type of stipend do I get?" And I'm like, "Well," and so I like to know more, right? And I said, "Well, tell me more. What do you mean by that?" He said, "Well, I'll be attending these conferences and events. I have my calendar, planned out each year, and I'm going to be bringing back those skills and that knowledge to Macy's." I can't argue with that.
Right. If y'all telling me to go here, y'all need to make sure I'm good.
Right. So what is the stipend? Guess what? You got it. And that was years ago, y'all. And I talked to thousands of people. But I remember them two specifically. Maybe because the hiring managers gave it to them, because I always get pushback. It's just a given. Nope, I'm firm. We're not going. We'll go to somebody else. So we would always have to do double work. But for some reason, like, when they also know your value and your work, they'll give it to you because they got it.
Yeah.
They got it. I see the budget.
Yeah.
And I know where I start. And I start pretty high. Like, I say low, but I know what's possible. That's why I say low. But the candidate doesn't.
Right. I hate that game.
I know.
Oh.
I know. I know. But I'm giving y'all what I know.
That's the truth, though. Yeah, that's the truth. But I'm like that with anything. I'm like, dude, what's the price? My husband took like 3 days to buy his truck. I'm not doing it. Like, what do y'all? I'm tired of coming back in here, sitting here and eating crackers, and these people. Like,
it's the long game. Sometimes you gotta do that.
That's what he said.
Yeah, it's the long game. It's chess, not chess. You gotta play it sometimes. And I'll go the next day. Okay. And then I do that with candidates too. And they say, well, I'll say, you know what, we're firm on this. We're not able to budge, but I wish you all the best. And they'll come back, okay. Because I play a little chicken with them, right? The hiring manager don't know I'm doing all this, but I know they're gonna accept. I wish you all the best. It's something we can't do right now. The hiring manager is firm on this. I'll just send an email, and I have a sense, and they'll typically 9 times out of 10 they'll come back. Okay, I'll go ahead and accept it, and then I'll tell them, what's in it for them. You're gonna get performance reviews. You're also eligible for on-target bonus or da-da-da-da. You're going to learn this. You're going to be a part of this initiative and all the things. So all of that is true. And a lot of people don't they just look at the comp.
Yeah.
Not skills.
Yeah.
And the exposure in the environment.
I was about to say environment too. Because to me, with me, I need to be remote. Like, I don't I need remote. If not, then like I'm willing to like teeter the line with it a little bit. Only because I've been in the office in downtown Atlanta and it was stressing me out. I gotta have a remote. So it's like, to me, it's always other things that contribute in addition to the money has to be there now. But I also want to consider like other things